My name is Elena, and I am 34 years old. I am sitting in my car right now, parked outside my parents' house, holding my daughter Lily's hand. She is 7, and she is wearing the red Christmas dress we picked out together last week. 3 months ago, I lost my grandma Maggie. She was the only person in my family who truly loved us, without conditions. Lily just asked me something that made my heart sink. "Mommy, will Grandpa be nice to me this year?" I squeezed her little fingers and told her everything would be fine. But deep down, I knew that walking through that door without Grandma there to protect us was going to be different. This is the story of how one Christmas night changed everything. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I would love to know who is joining me for this story. And if you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. What happened next is something I never could have predicted, not in a million years. Let me take you back to how it all began. Growing up in my family was like walking on eggshells that never stopped cracking. My father, Harold, was a retired military man, 67 years old now, with a rigid spine, and an even more rigid set of beliefs about how the world should work. He valued tradition, bloodlines, and appearances above everything else. In his eyes, family meant genetics. Family meant legacy. Family meant carrying forward a name that could be traced back through generations. I was his firstborn, his daughter, and from the moment I could understand words, I understood that I would never be enough. Not because I did anything wrong, but simply because I was not his son. My brother Kevin came along 3 years after me, and suddenly I became invisible in my own home. Harold coached Kevin in baseball, took him fishing on weekends, and talked about how Kevin would one day take over the family name. Meanwhile, I was expected to be quiet, be helpful, and never ask for too much. My mother Gloria was 64 now, a gentle woman who had spent her entire marriage learning how to disappear. She never contradicted Harold. She never stood up for me when he criticized my choices. She would just lower her eyes, busy her hands with some task, and pretend she had not heard what was said. I used to resent her for that silence. Now I just feel sad for her. She built a cage around herself to survive, and somewhere along the way she forgot that she had the key. But there was one person who saw me, really saw me. My grandmother Margaret. My mother's mother was a force of nature wrapped in soft cardigans and the smell of lavender. She was 89 when she passed, and until her last breath she made sure I knew that I was worthy of love. She would pull me aside at family gatherings and whisper, "Elena, do not let them dim your light. You shine too bright for small minds to understand." When I was 27, I had just come out of a short and painful marriage. My ex-husband had been charming at first, then controlling, then gone. The divorce left me bruised, but not broken. I had a stable career as an accountant at a firm in Denver, a small apartment that I had made into a home, and a growing certainty that I wanted to be a mother. I did not need a husband to make that happen. I had enough love in my heart to give a child everything they needed. The adoption process took 18 months. There were home studies, background checks, interviews, and mountains of paperwork. I chose to adopt from Guatemala because something in my heart pulled me there. When I first saw Lily's photo, she was 18 months old, with big brown eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. I knew in that instant that she was my daughter. I did not need to give birth to her to know that she was mine. Grandma Maggie flew to Guatemala with me to bring Lily home. She held my hand during the turbulent flight, helped me navigate the unfamiliar streets, and cried with me when I finally held Lily in my arms for the first time. That little girl grabbed onto my finger and would not let go, and Grandma Maggie laughed through her tears and said, "She knows. She already knows you are her mama." When we returned home, I expected some resistance from my family. What I did not expect was the wall of ice that Harold built between himself and my daughter. The first time I brought Lily to meet him, He looked at her for exactly 3 seconds before turning back to the television. "That child will never be a real part of this family," he said, not even bothering to lower his voice. Kevin and his wife Stephanie snickered in the corner. Gloria said nothing at all. Only Grandma Maggie stood up. She walked right up to Harold and said in a voice that could have cut glass, "Blood does not make family. Love does. And if you cannot find it in your heart to love this precious child, then perhaps you are the one who does not belong." Harold never forgave her for that, and he never changed his mind about Lily. For the next 5 years, he called her that girl instead of using her name. He forgot her birthdays. He ignored her at holidays. He made it painfully clear that in his eyes, she did not exist. But Grandma Maggie made up for all of it. She called Lily my little sunshine and spent hours teaching her how to bake cookies, how to plant flowers, how to find shapes in the clouds. Lily adored her great-grandma Maggie with the pure, uncomplicated love that only children can give. When Grandma Maggie passed away 3 months ago, Lily cried for a week. She kept asking me when great-grandma Maggie was coming back. I did not have the heart to explain that some goodbyes are forever. Now, sitting in this car outside my parents' house, I looked at my daughter in her red dress, with her hair braided the way Grandma Maggie used to do it. I made a silent promise to the woman who had loved us both so fiercely. I will protect her grandma, just like you protected me. Lily looked up at me with those big brown eyes. "Can we go inside now, Mommy? I am excited to see the Christmas tree." I took a deep breath, opened the car door, and helped my daughter out into the cold December air. The house was covered in twinkling lights, and through the window I could see the massive tree that Gloria decorated the same way every year. It looked like a postcard. It looked like a lie. We walked up the path together, my hand holding hers, and I rang the doorbell. The door swung open to reveal my mother standing there in her holiday apron, the same one she'd worn every Christmas for as long as I could remember. It had little reindeer on it, and a stain near the pocket that she had never been able to get out. She looked at me first, gave me a quick hug that barely made contact, and then her eyes moved to Lily. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. It might have been guilt. It might have been discomfort. Whatever it was, she buried it quickly. "Hi, Grandma Gloria," Lily said in her most polite voice. She had practiced that greeting in the car, wanting so badly to make a good impression. My daughter was 7 years old and already understood that she had to work harder than other children to be accepted. That knowledge broke my heart every single time I saw it in action. Gloria gave a small nod. "Hello." "Come in, it is cold outside." That was it. No warm welcome. No hug for her granddaughter. No compliment on Lily's pretty dress. Just a nod and a step backward to let us through the door. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and pine, the familiar sense of Christmas mingling with something roasting in the oven. The living room was dominated by the enormous tree covered in ornaments that spanned decades. I could see the macaroni angel I had made in second grade, hanging near the top, right next to the crystal star that had belonged to Grandma Maggie. For a moment, grief hit me like a wave. She should have been here. She should have been sitting in her favorite chair by the fireplace, ready to pull Lily onto her lap and tell her stories about the olden days. Instead, that chair sat empty. And in the center of the room, my father Harold sat on his leather recliner with my nephew Brandon on his lap. Brandon was 5 years old, the son of Kevin and Stephanie, and according to Harold, he was the golden child, the real grandchild, the one who mattered. "Look what Grandpa got you," Harold was saying to Brandon, his voice warm and animated in a way I had never heard him speak to Lily. "It is a remote control car. We can race it in the backyard tomorrow." Brandon squealed with delight and threw his arms around Harold's neck. Harold laughed and hugged him back. The scene was so tender, so normal, so everything that my daughter had never received from this man who shared her last name. Kevin and Stephanie were lounging on the expensive leather sofa, looking like they had stepped out of a catalog for people who had never struggled a day in their lives. Stephanie was 30 now, with perfectly highlighted hair and nails that probably cost more than my grocery budget for a month. She glanced up when we entered, and I watched her eyes travel from me to Lily and back again. A small smirk played at the corner of her lips as she leaned over to whisper something to Kevin. He laughed quietly, not even bothering to stand up and greet us. "Hey, Elena," Kevin said, his voice dripping with false casualness. "You made it. We did." I kept my tone neutral, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me react. "Merry Christmas, Kevin. Stephanie." Stephanie waved a hand without looking up from her phone. "Yeah, Merry Christmas." Lily tugged at my sleeve. "Mommy," she whispered, "can I show Grandpa my present?" Now I looked down at my daughter at the hope still shining in her eyes despite everything, and I wanted to scream at every adult in this room who had failed her. Instead, I smiled and nodded. "Of course, sweetheart. Go ahead." Lily walked over to Harold with the careful steps of someone approaching an unpredictable animal. In her hands, she carried a piece of rolled-up paper tied with a red ribbon. She had spent 3 days working on it, a drawing of our family, standing in front of a house with a rainbow overhead. She had included everyone, even the people who did not deserve to be there. At the bottom, in her careful 7-year-old handwriting, she had written, "I love my family." "Merry Christmas," Grandpa, Lily said, holding out the drawing. "I made this for you." Harold looked at the paper in her hands for exactly 1 second. Then without a word he took it, set it on the side table next to his chair, and turned back to Brandon. "So, buddy, what color do you want the car to be when we race it?" Lily stood there frozen. Her arms still extended, her face slowly crumbling as she realized what had just happened. I was at her side in an instant, pulling her close, trying to shield her from the cruelty she should never have had to experience. Over her head, I met my father's eyes. He looked back at me with an expression of complete indifference, as if he had not just broken a little girl's heart on Christmas Eve. "Come on, baby," I murmured into Lily's hair. "Let us go help Grandma Gloria in the kitchen." I led her away from the living room, away from my father and his golden grandchild, away from Kevin's smirk and Stephanie's contempt. Behind us, I heard Brandon ask if he could open another present early, and Harold's delighted agreement echoed down the hallway like salt in an open wound. In the kitchen, Gloria was stirring something on the stove with mechanical precision. She did not look up when we entered. I sat Lily at the small breakfast table and gave her a cookie from the tray cooling on the counter. "Eat this, sweetheart. I need to talk to Grandma for a minute." Lily took the cookie with a small thank you that nearly shattered me. Even now, even after what had just happened, she remembered her manners. She was more gracious at 7 than most of the adults in this house would ever be. I moved to stand next to my mother, keeping my voice low. "Mom, did you see what just happened in there?" Gloria's stirring did not falter. "Your father has a lot on his mind, Elena. You know how he is. How he is. He completely ignored Lily's gift. He did not even look at it. She worked so hard on that drawing." For the first time, Gloria glanced over at Lily sitting alone at the table with her cookie. Something crossed her face again, that same flicker I had seen at the door. But then it was gone, buried under years of practiced avoidance. I am sure he did not mean anything by it. He is just excited to see Brandon. You know how much he loves that boy. And what about Lily? Does he love her? Gloria's stirring stopped. She stared into the pot, as if it held the answers to questions she had been avoiding her entire life. "Elena," she said quietly, "some things are not going to change. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for everyone. Easier for everyone. As if my daughter's pain was an inconvenience. As if her existence was a problem to be managed, rather than a miracle to be celebrated." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words died in my throat. What was the point? Gloria had made her choice a long time ago, and that choice was silence. I walked back to Lily and sat down across from her. "How is that cookie, baby, good?" she said, but her voice was flat. Mommy, why did Grandpa not like my drawing? I reached across the table and took her hand. Oh, sweetheart, sometimes adults get distracted. It is not about you. Your drawing is beautiful. Lily looked at me with eyes that were far too old for her face. He does not like me, does he? I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her that of course he did that. Everything was fine, that she was imagining things. But Lily was too smart for lies, and she deserved better than false comfort. Grandpa has trouble showing his feelings sometimes, I said carefully. But that has nothing to do with how wonderful you are. You are kind and smart and creative, and anyone who does not see that is missing out. Lily nodded slowly, but I could tell she did not fully believe me. How could she when the evidence of Harold's rejection was written so clearly across this entire evening? The kitchen timer beeped, and Gloria began moving plates and serving dishes to the dining room. It was time for dinner, time to sit around a table with people who saw my daughter as less than, time to pretend that everything was normal while my heart broke for the 1,000th time. I helped Lily down from her chair and smoothed her dress. Ready to eat, she nodded, squaring her little shoulders like a soldier going into battle. Ready. Together, we walked toward the dining room, and I could not shake the feeling that something terrible was waiting for us there. The dining room had been set with the good china, the kind that only came out twice a year for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier overhead, and a centerpiece of red roses and evergreen branches sat in the middle of the table. It looked beautiful. It felt like a trap. Harold had taken his place at the head of the table, the patriarch surveying his domain. Kevin sat to his right with Stephanie beside him, Brandon already fidgeting in his booster seat. Gloria emerged from the kitchen carrying the turkey, placing it in front of Harold for carving. I guided Lily toward the table looking for our seats. That was when I saw it. Next to Harold in the place of honor sat an empty chair. It was the chair where Grandma Maggie had always sat right beside her son-in-law, close enough to keep him in check, with nothing more than a raised eyebrow. For 5 years, I had watched her sit in that chair and defend me and Lily with quiet dignity. Now the chair was empty, and its emptiness felt like a void that could swallow us whole. Lily, I said softly, why do not you sit here next to Grandpa? I pointed to Grandma Maggie's chair. I thought that maybe if Lily sat in that seat, some of Grandma's protective energy would transfer to her. Maybe Harold would look at my daughter and see something worth loving. Lily climbed into the chair carefully, her small feet dangling above the floor. She looked up at Harold with cautious hope. Is this okay? Grandpa Harold did not answer. He was focused on carving the turkey, the knife making clean cuts through the golden skin. I took my seat across the table, telling myself that his silence was not a rejection. Maybe he was just concentrating. Maybe everything would be fine. Stephanie leaned over to Kevin and said something in a low voice that made him snort. I caught fragments of her words, something about seats and family, but I chose to ignore it. I was not going to let her ruin this night before it even started. Gloria finished bringing out the side dishes and took her place at the other end of the table opposite Harold. For a moment, everything was still. The food was beautiful. The table was set. And we were all together on Christmas Eve. If you squinted hard enough, you could almost believe we were a normal family. Then Harold looked up from the turkey. He looked at Lily sitting in the chair beside him, and his face went cold. What do you think you are doing? His voice was quiet, but sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. I felt my stomach drop. Dad, I said quickly. I asked Lily to sit there. I thought it would be nice. Nice. Harold set down the carving knife. He pushed back his chair and stood up, towering over my daughter. That seat is for family. Real family. Lily's eyes went wide. She looked at me, then back at Harold, confusion written across her features. I am family, Grandpa. I am your granddaughter. Harold's jaw tightened. No, you are not. What happened next will be burned into my memory until the day I die. Harold reached down, grabbed Lily by the shoulders, and shoved her off the chair. My daughter tumbled sideways, her head hitting the edge of the table on the way down, before she landed on the hardwood floor with a sickening thud. "That seat is for my real grandkid," Harold said, his voice rising. "Brandon, come sit here next to Grandpa where you belong." For one eternal second, nobody moved. The only sound was Lily's crying, sharp and broken, coming from the floor where she lay crumpled. Then I was moving, scrambling around the table, dropping to my knees beside my daughter. "Baby, baby, are you okay? Let me see." I pulled her into my arms, checking her head for injuries. There was already a red mark forming on her forehead where she had hit the table. Her whole body was shaking with sobs. "It hurts, Mommy, it hurts." "I know, sweetheart, I know." I held her close, rocking her gently, trying to contain the rage that was building inside me like a wildfire. Brandon had climbed into the empty chair, oblivious to what had just happened, or perhaps too young to understand it. Stephanie was smiling, actually smiling as if watching a 7-year-old get pushed to the ground was entertainment. Kevin had his phone out, probably texting someone about the drama unfolding at Christmas dinner. I stood up with Lily still in my arms and turned to face my father. My hands were shaking, my voice was shaking. Everything in me was shaking with fury I had spent decades learning to suppress. "How dare you?" The words came out low and dangerous, nothing like my usual careful tone. "How dare you put your hands on my daughter? She is 7 years old, Dad. 7. Harold met my gaze without flinching. "She is not my granddaughter, Elena. She never has been, and she never will be. I do not know why you insist on pretending otherwise." Pretending, I took a step toward him. "Lily is my daughter. I chose her. I went through 18 months of paperwork and interviews and flights across the world to bring her home. She is as much my child as Brandon is Kevin's. It is not the same thing, and you know it. Blood is blood, Elena. That girl has no connection to this family. She does not look like us. She does not share our history. She is a stranger you decided to bring into our lives, and you expect us all to just accept it." Lily buried her face in my shoulder, crying harder now. She could hear everything. She could understand every word. And I was powerless to protect her from the truth of what her grandfather thought of her. I looked around the room, desperately seeking an ally. "Mom," I said, turning to Gloria, "are you going to say anything? Are you just going to sit there and let him do this?" Gloria's hands were clasped in her lap, her knuckles white. She stared at the tablecloth, refusing to meet my eyes. "Elena," she whispered, "please, let us not make a scene." "Make a scene?" My voice cracked. "He just assaulted my child. He pushed a little girl onto the floor because she sat in the wrong chair. And you are worried about making a scene?" Kevin finally looked up from his phone. "Come on, Elena." Dad barely touched her. "You are being dramatic as usual." "Dramatic. Right." I glared at my brother with every ounce of contempt I had ever felt for him. "Your son just took my daughter's place at the table after watching her get hurt, and I am being dramatic." Stephanie chimed in with her poisonous voice. "Honestly, Elena, maybe you should just leave. You are ruining Christmas for everyone." The irony of that statement was so thick I could have choked on it. I was ruining Christmas. Not Harold, who had just traumatized a child. Not Kevin and Stephanie, who sat there gloating. Not Gloria, who refused to defend her own granddaughter. Me. The problem was me. I took a deep breath and made a decision. "Fine," I said. "We are leaving." I shifted Lily in my arms, ignoring the pain in my back from holding her too long. "But I want you all to know something. This is not okay. What just happened is not okay. And I will never, ever bring my daughter back to this house again." I turned toward the front door, ready to walk out of this family forever. Lily clung to me, her tears soaking through my shirt, her small body trembling against mine. We were 3 steps from freedom when the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Gloria looked at Harold. Kevin looked at Stephanie. I stopped in my tracks, Lily still in my arms. "Who on earth could that be?" Gloria murmured. "On Christmas Eve." Nobody moved to answer it. The bell rang again more insistently this time. For heaven's sake. Harold pushed back from the table. I will get it. He strode past me without a glance, yanked open the front door, and there stood a man I had never seen before. He was maybe 45, dressed in a dark suit, with a leather briefcase in his hand. Despite the cold, he looked perfectly composed. Good evening, the man said. I am looking for the residence of Harold and Gloria Mitchell. Harold frowned. That is us. Who are you? The man extended his hand, which Harold did not take. My name is Daniel Whitmore. I am an attorney representing the estate of Margaret Ellen Davis. I apologize for the intrusion on Christmas Eve, but I have specific instructions from Mrs. Davis that required my presence here this evening. At the sound of Grandma Maggie's name, I felt something shift in the air. Lily lifted her head from my shoulder, her tears pausing as she listened. Margaret Gloria said, rising from her chair, You are talking about my mother, yes, ma'am. Mr. Whitmore stepped inside without waiting to be invited, his eyes scanning the room and taking in every detail. Mrs. Davis updated her will approximately 6 months before her passing. She left very specific instructions about when and how certain portions of that will should be disclosed. I am here to fulfill those instructions. Harold's face had gone pale. What instructions? Mr. Whitmore set his briefcase on the sideboard and clicked it open. Mrs. Davis specified that if during the first Christmas gathering following her death, her great-granddaughter Lily was subjected to discriminatory treatment or cruelty by members of this family, I was to appear immediately to read the relevant portions of her will. I felt the blood drain from my face. Grandma Maggie had planned for this. She had known even before she died that without her protection, Lily would be mistreated. She had prepared for it. She had taken steps to defend us from beyond the grave. This is ridiculous, Harold sputtered. How would you even know what happened here tonight? Mr. Whitmore looked directly at Gloria. Because Mrs. Mitchell called me approximately 10 minutes ago. Every head in the room swiveled toward my mother. Gloria stood by her chair, her hands no longer clasped, but hanging at her sides. Her chin was lifted slightly, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw something like defiance in her eyes. Mom, I breathed. You called him. Gloria nodded slowly. Your grandmother made me promise Elena. She said that if things ever went too far, I was to contact Mr. Whitmore immediately. She gave me his number and made me memorize it. She said you and Lily would need someone to fight for you when she was gone. Harold stared at his wife as if he had never seen her before. Gloria, what have you done? What I should have done years ago, Harold. Gloria's voice was steady, stronger than I had ever heard it. I have watched you hurt our daughter and our granddaughter for too long. Tonight you crossed a line. You put your hands on a child. I will not be silent about that. Not anymore. The room had gone completely still. Stephanie's smug expression had been replaced by something closer to fear. Kevin's phone lay forgotten on the table. Brandon looked around in confusion, sensing that something important was happening, but too young to understand what. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat. If I may have everyone's attention, I would like to proceed with the reading. He pulled a stack of documents from his briefcase and began to speak in the measured tones of someone who had delivered difficult news many times before. Mrs. Margaret Ellen Davis was at the time of her death the sole owner of several significant assets. These include first, the property located at this address in Colorado Springs. Mrs. Davis purchased this home in 1968 and allowed her daughter and son-in-law to reside here. The title has always remained in her name. Harold made a choking sound. What second Mr. Whitmore continued, a 50-acre farm property located outside of Pueblo. Third, various bank accounts and investment portfolios valued at approximately $2.3 million. Fourth, a collection of antiques and jewelry, including several pieces of significant historical value. The numbers hung in the air like physical objects. I had known that Grandma Maggie was comfortable, but I had no idea the extent of her wealth. And from the look on Harold's face, neither did he. Mrs. Davis was very clear about her wishes regarding the distribution of these assets, Mr. Whitmore said. He looked directly at me and then at Lily, who was still cradled in my arms. Everything goes to Elena Marie Mitchell and her daughter, Lily Margaret Mitchell. The silence that followed Mr. Whitmore's announcement was so complete that I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Even Lily had gone still in my arms, her tear-stained face turned toward the lawyer, as if she understood that something monumental had just occurred. Harold was the first to break the silence. His face had turned a mottled shade of red, and when he spoke, his voice came out strangled. "That cannot be right. There must be some mistake. Mother-in-law would never cut us out. We have lived in this house for 30 years. Mr. Whitmore remained perfectly calm. "I assure you, Mr. Mitchell, there is no mistake. I have worked with Mrs. Davis on her estate planning for over 15 years. She was very deliberate in her final wishes. But why?" Kevin stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "Why would she give everything to Elena? Elena is not even her real grandchild. She is Gloria's daughter, not related to Margaret by blood at all." A small smile crossed Mr. Whitmore's face. Interestingly, Mr. Mitchell, Mrs. Davis, anticipated that objection. She left a note specifically addressing it. He shuffled through his papers and pulled out a handwritten letter. "May I read it?" Nobody gave him permission, but nobody stopped him either. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat. "This is in Mrs. Davis's own words. To anyone who questions why I have left my estate to Elena and Lily, rather than to Harold and Kevin, let me be perfectly clear. Family is not determined by blood or genetics. Family is determined by love, loyalty, and the choice to show up for one another. Elena has been more of a grandchild to me than Harold's biological son ever was. She visited me every week. She called me every day. She included me in her life and in Lily's life with grace and generosity. And Lily, my precious great-granddaughter, brought more joy into my final years than I ever thought possible. They are my family by choice, and choice is the strongest bond there is. To Harold and Kevin, I leave nothing material, because you have shown me through your actions that material things are all you value. I hope that in losing them, you will finally learn what truly matters." Mr. Whitmore folded the letter and placed it back in his briefcase. Mrs. Davis also left individual letters for Mr. Harold Mitchell and Mr. Kevin Mitchell, which I am required to deliver. He produced 2 sealed envelopes and held them out. Harold snatched his envelope with shaking hands and tore it open. His eyes moved across the page, and with each line he read, his face grew paler. When he finished, he crumpled the letter in his fist and threw it on the floor. "This is insane," he spat. "Margaret was clearly not in her right mind when she wrote this. We will contest it. We will take this to court." Mr. Whitmore shook his head. "I would advise against that, Mr. Mitchell. Mrs. Davis anticipated legal challenges and took extensive precautions. Her will was witnessed by 2 independent parties and notarized by a licensed notary public. Additionally, she recorded a video statement 3 months before her death, demonstrating her mental competence and reaffirming her wishes. I have that video available should anyone wish to view it." A video. Stephanie's voice was shrill. "What kind of person makes a video about their will?" "A person who knew her family very well," Mr. Whitmore replied, "and who wanted to ensure her wishes could not be disputed." Kevin was reading his own letter now, his face cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been shame. When he finished, he did not throw it down like Harold had. Instead, he folded it carefully and slipped it into his pocket. He would not meet anyone's eyes. I still had not moved from my spot near the door. Lily was growing heavy in my arms, but I could not bring myself to put her down. It felt like if I let go of her, everything would fall apart. "Mr. Whitmore turned to face me directly. "Ms. Mitchell, I know this is a great deal to process on Christmas Eve. I have prepared a summary document outlining the specific terms of your inheritance, including the timeline for transferring the deed to this property. According to Mrs. Davis's wishes, Mr. Harold and Mrs. Gloria Mitchell have 90 days to vacate the premises. 90 days. Harold roared. You expect us to find a new home in 90 days? Those were Mrs. Davis's terms, Mr. Whitmore said evenly. Of course, the final decision rests with Miss Mitchell as the new owner. She is free to extend that timeline if she chooses. All eyes turned to me. Harold's were blazing with fury. Kevin's were calculating. Stephanie's were filled with naked resentment. Gloria's were unreadable. I took a deep breath. I thought about Grandma Maggie, about everything she had done to protect me and Lily. I thought about the years of cruelty, the years of being made to feel small, the years of watching my daughter be rejected by people who should have loved her. I thought about the fact that this house, this home where I had experienced so much pain, now belonged to me. I shifted Lily to my other hip and looked at my father. I never wanted your money, Dad. I never wanted this house. All I ever wanted was for you to treat Lily like she mattered, like she was worthy of your love. Harold's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Grandma Maggie knew that would never happen, I continued. She knew that without her here to protect us, you would hurt Lily. And she was right. Tonight you pushed my daughter to the ground because she sat in a chair. You called her not real. You made her feel like she did not belong in her own family. I paused, feeling the weight of everything I was about to say. So I am going to accept this inheritance, not because I want your money, but because Grandma Maggie wanted Lily to have it. Because she believed that Lily deserved security and stability and a future where she did not have to beg for scraps of affection from people who would never accept her. Lily's arms tightened around my neck. She had stopped crying now, listening to my words with that uncanny attentiveness she always had. But I am not going to throw you out in 90 days, I said. That is not who I am, and it is not who Grandma Maggie raised me to be. You can have 6 months. That should be enough time to find a new place to live. Harold looked like he wanted to argue, but for once in his life he seemed to realize he had no leverage, no power, no control. The tables had turned completely, and there was nothing he could do about it. Mr. Whitmore nodded approvingly. That is very generous, Miss Mitchell. I will make a note of the extended timeline. He began gathering his documents. If you have any questions or need assistance with the transfer of assets, please do not hesitate to contact my office. My card is in the document folder. Thank you, I said, for everything, for coming tonight, for making sure Grandma Maggie's wishes were honored. It was my privilege, Mr. Whitmore said. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. He glanced at Lily, and his professional demeanor softened slightly. She talked about you both often. She loved you very much. I felt tears prick at my eyes. I know. I loved her too. Mr. Whitmore picked up his briefcase and headed for the door. Before he left, he turned back one last time. Happy holidays, Ms. Mitchell. I think Mrs. Davis would be very proud of how you handled yourself tonight. Then he was gone, and I was left standing in the foyer of a house that now belonged to me, surrounded by people who had spent years making me feel unwelcome in it. Gloria rose from her chair and walked toward me. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Elena, I am so sorry. For everything, for all the years I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. For letting your father treat you and Lily the way he did. I was afraid and I was weak, and you both deserved so much better. Mom. I reached out and took her hand with my free one. You called Mr. Whitmore tonight. You stood up when it mattered most. That means something. Gloria shook her head. It should have happened years ago. But your grandmother made me promise. She said that when the time came, I would know what to do. And when I saw Lily on the floor tonight crying, I finally understood what she meant. She reached up and gently touched Lily's cheek. I am so sorry, sweetheart. Can you ever forgive your silly old Grandma Lily? Studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, she nodded. It is okay, Grandma Gloria. Great-Grandma Maggie always said people can change if they really want to. Gloria let out a sob and pulled us both into a hug. Behind us, Harold stood alone in the middle of the dining room, surrounded by the ruins of his Christmas dinner and the ashes of his authority. Kevin and Stephanie had retreated to the corner, whispering urgently to each other. Brandon had fallen asleep in his chair, oblivious to the drama unfolding around him. I looked at my father one last time. "Merry Christmas, Dad," I said quietly. Then I turned, opened the front door, and carried my daughter out into the cold December night. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the smell of snow that had not yet fallen. Above us, the stars were coming out tiny pinpricks of light in the vast darkness. Lily lifted her head from my shoulder and looked up at them. "Mommy," she said, "do you think Great-Grandma Maggie can see us from up there?" "I think so, baby. I think she is watching over us right now." Lily was quiet for a moment. "I miss her. I miss her too. But you know what? She left us a really special gift tonight. She made sure we would always be okay. The house. The house, yes. And the farm. And some money for your future. But more than that, she gave us something even more important. She showed us that family is not about who you are related to. It is about who loves you and who you love back." Lily considered this with the seriousness only a child can muster. "Like you and me. Exactly like you and me." We walked to the car together, the lights of the house growing smaller behind us. As I buckled Lily into her car seat, she reached out and touched my face. "Mommy, are you sad?" I thought about the question. Was I sad? Part of me was grieving for the family I had always wanted and would never have. But another part of me, a bigger part, felt something closer to relief, to freedom, to hope. A little bit, I admitted. But mostly, I am grateful. Grateful for you and grateful for Grandma Maggie and grateful that we get to start a new chapter together. Lily smiled, the first real smile I had seen from her all evening. "I like new chapters. Me too, baby, me too." I got into the driver's seat and started the engine. As we pulled away from my parents' house, I did not look back. There was nothing behind me worth seeing. Everything that mattered was right here in this car, buckled safely into a car seat, humming a Christmas carol under her breath. We drove home through streets decorated with lights and lawns covered in inflatable Santas. Other families were probably gathered around their trees right now, opening presents and drinking cocoa, living the kind of Christmas that existed in movies and commercials. Our Christmas had been different. It had been painful and dramatic, and nothing like what I had hoped for. But it had also been transformative. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my father. For the first time, my mother had stood up too. And somewhere up among those stars, I knew Grandma Maggie was smiling. The weeks following that Christmas were some of the hardest of my life. The practical matters were overwhelming on their own. There were documents to sign, properties to inspect, accounts to transfer. Mr. Whitmore guided me through the process with patience and professionalism. But even with his help, I felt like I was drowning in paperwork and decisions. But the emotional aftermath was even more challenging. In the quiet hours of the night when Lily was asleep and the house was silent, I would find myself replaying the events of that evening over and over. The sound of Lily hitting the floor. The coldness in Harold's voice when he said she was not his real grandchild. The years and years of accumulated hurt that I had tried so hard to ignore. I started seeing a therapist in January, a kind woman named Dr. Patterson, who specialized in family trauma. At first, I felt silly sitting on her couch talking about my feelings like they were important enough to warrant professional attention. But slowly, session by session, I began to untangle the knots that had been forming inside me since childhood. I learned that my need for Harold's approval had been a chain around my neck, pulling me back to people and situations that only caused me pain. I learned that Gloria's silence was not my burden to carry, and that her decision to finally speak up did not erase the years she had chosen not to. I learned that I could love my family and still recognize that they were not safe for me or for Lily. Most importantly, I learned that letting go of anger was not the same as forgiving. I did not owe Harold my forgiveness. I did not owe Kevin or Stephanie anything at all. But I did owe it to myself and to Lily to release the bitterness that had been poisoning my heart. Not for their sake, but for ours. Lily went through her own process. I found a child psychologist who specialized in adoption-related issues, a gentle man named Dr. Reyes, who quickly became someone Lily trusted. Through play therapy and conversation, Lily began to understand that the way Harold had treated her was not her fault and did not reflect her worth. She learned words for the feelings she had been carrying, words like rejection and grief and confusion. And slowly, she began to heal. One night in February, Lily came to me while I was reading on the couch. She climbed up beside me and nestled into my side the way she always did when she had something important to say. "Mommy, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Anything." "Why did Grandpa Harold not love me?" It was the question I had been dreading, the one I had no good answer for. I set down my book and pulled her closer. "I do not know, baby. Sometimes people have ideas in their heads about what family should look like, and when reality does not match those ideas, they get scared or angry. Grandpa Harold thought family meant sharing the same blood, but he was wrong. Great-Grandma Maggie did not think that. No, she did not. Grandma Maggie knew that family means loving someone and choosing them and showing up for them no matter what. She chose us, Lily, and we chose her. That is what made us family." Lily was quiet for a moment processing this. Then she said, "I am glad you chose me, Mommy." I had to blink back tears. "I am the lucky one, baby. Choosing you was the best decision I ever made." She smiled up at me, and in that smile, I saw resilience and hope and the unbreakable spirit that had drawn me to her from the very first moment I saw her photo. This child had been through so much in her 7 years. Orphaned in a country far from here, adopted by a stranger who loved her sight unseen, rejected by half of her new family. And still she smiled, still she trusted, still she loved. I pulled her onto my lap and held her tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against my chest. We had lost so much, but we had each other, and that was enough. Gloria started calling regularly after Christmas. At first I was wary, waiting for her to slide back into old patterns of avoidance and appeasement. But something had genuinely shifted in her. She asked about Lily's school. She remembered her favorite foods. She sent birthday cards with handwritten notes instead of generic printed messages. In March, she came to visit us in Denver. It was awkward at first, the three of us dancing around the elephant in the room. But on the second day, Gloria asked if she could take Lily to the park while I ran errands, and when I picked them up 2 hours later, they were both laughing. Lily was teaching Gloria some complicated hand-clapping game, and Gloria was trying her best to keep up failing spectacularly and laughing at herself. That night after Lily went to bed, Gloria and I sat on the porch with cups of tea. "I should have done this years ago," Gloria said quietly. "Been a real grandmother to her. I wasted so much time." "You are here now," I said. "That is what matters." She shook her head. I kept telling myself that staying quiet was keeping the peace, that if I just did not make waves, everything would be fine. But all I was really doing was letting your father hurt you and Lily while I stood by and watched. "I know, Mom." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I know you know, and I know that makes it worse. I am so sorry, Elena. I am so sorry for all of it." I reached over and took her hand. "Grandma Maggie believed people could change," I said. "Lily reminded me of that, so I am choosing to believe it too. I am not saying I have forgotten what happened or that it does not still hurt, but I am saying that we can move forward, together." Gloria squeezed my hand. "I do not deserve you." "Yes, you do. We all deserve second chances." After that visit, things between us continued to improve. Gloria came back every few months, and we went to see her in the new apartment she had rented after moving out of Grandma Maggie's house. Yes, she and Harold had separated. Not divorced, at least not yet, but living apart for the first time in over 40 years. Gloria said she needed space to figure out who she was without him. I thought that was probably the bravest thing she had ever done. Harold never reached out. Neither did Kevin or Stephanie. Sometimes I wondered if they thought about that Christmas night, if they ever felt remorse for what they had done. Probably not. People like them rarely did. But I had stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I had stopped needing them. The farm outside of Pueblo turned out to be beautiful. Rolling hills, a creek running through the property, an old farmhouse that needed work but had good bones. I took Lily there in the spring to see her inheritance, and she fell in love with it immediately. "Can we have horses, Mommy?" she asked, running through the tall grass with her arms spread wide. "And chickens, and maybe a goat," I laughed. "Maybe someday, baby, when you are older." "But this is mine right. Great-Grandma Maggie gave it to me." She did. "It will be yours when you turn 18. Until then, I will take care of it for you." Lily stopped running and turned to look at me, her face suddenly serious. "Mommy, why did Great-Grandma Maggie leave this to me? I am not even her real great-grandchild." It was the same question that Grandpa Harold could never understand. But from Lily's lips, it meant something different. It was not a challenge or an accusation. It was genuine curiosity, a child trying to make sense of the world. I walked over and knelt down to her level. "Lily, Grandma Maggie loved you more than almost anyone in the world. She used to tell me that you were the best thing that ever happened to our family. She did not care about blood or genetics or any of that stuff. She cared about who you are as a person. And who you are, baby, is pretty amazing." Lily thought about this. "So she left me a whole farm because she loved me." That is exactly right. A slow smile spread across her face. "That is a lot of love." "It is," I agreed. "And you are worth every single acre." I used some of the money from Grandma Maggie's accounts to set up a scholarship fund in her name. The Margaret Davis Foundation for Adopted Children provided financial assistance for families going through the adoption process, helping with legal fees and travel expenses, and all the other costs that can make building a family so difficult. It felt like the right way to honor her memory by helping other children like Lily find their forever homes. On what would have been Grandma Maggie's 90th birthday, Lily and I visited her grave. It was a sunny day in April, the kind of day she would have loved. We brought flowers from her garden at the farm, irises and daffodils that she had planted years ago. "Hi, Great-Grandma Maggie," Lily said, kneeling by the headstone. "I miss you. Mommy says you are watching us from heaven. I hope you are proud of me. I got an A on my spelling test last week." I stood behind her, my hand on her shoulder, my heart full of gratitude and grief and love. "Thank you," I said silently, "for everything you gave us, for protecting Lily even when you were not here to do it, for teaching me what family really means." A breeze stirred the flowers we had laid on the grave, making them dance. Lily giggled. "Look, Mommy, Great-Grandma Maggie is saying hello." I smiled through my tears. "I think you are right, baby. I think she is." We stood there for a long time, the three of us together, even though only two of us could be seen. And when we finally walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years. The pain of that Christmas night had not disappeared entirely. It probably never would. But it had transformed into something else, something like wisdom, something like peace. That Christmas taught me that family is not defined by blood or last names. It is defined by the people who choose to love you, protect you, and fight for you, even when you are not in the room. Grandma Maggie fought for me and Lily her whole life, and she kept fighting even after she was gone. If there is someone in your life who loves you unconditionally, the way my Grandma Maggie loved Lily, hold on to them. Do not take them for granted. Do not assume they will always be there. Show them every single day how much they mean to you. And if you are that person for someone else, if you are the one who loves and protects and fights, never underestimate the power of what you are doing. It might just be the greatest inheritance you ever leave behind. I looked out the window just now and saw Lily playing in the garden, her laughter carrying on the wind. Around her neck, catching the light, is the pearl necklace that Grandma Maggie left her 5 generations of love and history, resting against my daughter's heart. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered, "for everything. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone in your life who loved you unconditionally, the way Grandma Maggie loved Lily? Or have you ever been that person for someone else? Please share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences might help someone else who is going through a difficult time. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel, so you do not miss any of my future stories. I post new content every week, and there are so many more stories I cannot wait to share with you. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. Whatever family looks like for you, whether it is blood relatives or chosen family or somewhere in between, I hope you know that you are worthy of love, you are worthy of belonging, and you are never alone. Take care of yourself.